Okay, looks like we're officially recording. Did the Q&A work? Can someone test the Q&A? That's not really a question. Looks like the Q&A is working. Okay, it's 12:30, so we're going to go ahead and start. This is the February edition of our recurring monthly meeting for the South End Water Main Project. It is currently 12:30 p.m. and it is rainy and cold outside, so hopefully y'all are all staying warm. Katie's going to be our moderator today, so she will be keeping her eyes on the Q&A section. If you do have a question, feel free to go ahead and put that into the Q&A. I will have my Q&A windows kind of off to the side so I can see my presentation here. But yes, please feel free to submit questions, and if we have time, we'll get to them at the end of the presentation. And if they are in-depth questions, then we will put together more lengthy answers and post those to the website. That's our website address right there, charlotteswim.com. Now, this will all get probably posted again at the end of the presentation as well. But I'm going to go ahead and pitch this now, and I'll pitch it later too. If you really want to be kept abreast of what is going on with this project, text South End Water to 31996, and we will text you updates when we're changing phases and finishing projects and starting new sections, and also when we're having these virtual meetings, which we have monthly. Here's the contacts. My name is Will Rice. That's my phone number and my email address. If you want to reach out to the project team as a whole, it's better to go ahead and email that info@charlotteswim.com address. This website has all the information now and past and the future as well. And if you're a business and you have a problem sort of during the weekdays while we're doing construction, the best person to reach out to is Keith Hunter. He's actually on the phone as well. That's his phone number and his email address. That's for the most immediate sort of construction related concerns. Otherwise, these are sort of all good means and methods for reaching out to us. So depending on what you need or how fast you need response. For this presentation today, we're just going to go through 30 to 90 days, sort of look ahead, talk a little bit about what's going on right now, talk a little bit about traffic and detours and alternative routes. The bulk of the presentation is going to be sort of me talking through some pictures about how we build a water line in the middle of a busy street and construction practices. And I'd encourage you, if you find it interesting, to go back and look at previous virtual meetings, because there's lots of talks about how we build a line and various pictures and different stages. There's a couple other topics we'll talk about. And then lastly, I'll put the contact slide up again and answer some question and answer if we have time. So jumping in, just sort of, here's our graphic about the general area of South Boulevard that we are in. We are north of Clanton now, but we are not even close to being up to Poindexter yet. But next few months, this is sort of the sections and areas we'll be working in. The green line, of course, is the new water line, and the blue lines are all the streets. So to talk a little bit more specifically, we are in what we're calling phase 4 right now. This will be ongoing for the next 8 to 10 weeks. We are north of Clanton, up to the Greystone area. We are doing this project in a series of phases to try to close as little of South Boulevard as possible as we move northward. We're putting very large valves in the roadway as well, and we essentially have phased it off so that we work up to the next valve, and then that way we can test and make sure that section line's good before we move on to the future section, so that we won't have to drop back and do as much rework as possible. We do have to drop back to our phase 1, which actually is sort of a sub phase or a mini phase, and really that's just the tie-in of this new 24-inch line. So the new 2-foot diameter line we're putting in is going to tie into a 30-inch diameter line that runs from Woodlawn and Park Road up Scaly Bark over to South Boulevard and then over Freeland to connect to South Tryon. So that tie-in connection and a couple other minor issues that we're going to just briefly touch on later, those are all going to get addressed sometime in March. That should be a 12-week tie-in worst case scenario. We are finding that we're having a lot of rain days, unfortunately, lately, and that's kind of slowing down our progress. But 12 weeks is sort of the the max time we think to go back and finish up that tie-in. We also will have a very brief part of phase 4, which will be a Greystone Road closure. I've got a picture about that. I'll show in just a second here, but essentially, right now you can turn off of Greystone onto northbound South Boulevard. We will need a 2 to 3 week period of time there where Greystone will be closed, and you won't be able to turn off South Boulevard or onto Greystone. And that's just to connect the large line there and to do that valve connection as well. Once we finish all of phase 4 and finish the tie into phase 1, we're going to go ahead and activate all of that section. So all the sections from Scaly Bark up to Greystone will be active and functioning. And then at that point, we will move to phase 5, which will be Greystone to Poindexter. And then lastly, once we get this, once we get the tie-in done, and once we get the new pipe all online and functioning, then we will go ahead and start connecting services. And we're thinking that's going to be we're going to start looking at connecting the new services in the March windows there. And so then all the businesses on South Boulevard that we have moved past will get new service connections, and we'll be on the new 24-inch water line. Here's one more map, lots of maps, another map about sort of our phasing plan. You can see phase 4 is what we're in right now, and then phase 5 will be up to just past Elmhurst, but before Poindexter. So now everyone's favorite topic, traffic detours and sort of alternative routes. So currently, if you are traveling northbound on South Boulevard and you want to access neighborhoods on the west side of South Boulevard, you have to either turn prematurely at Clanton or go through our construction site, get all the way to New Bern, turn left onto New Bern. If you are trying to access the east side, all the roads are still open. So Hollis, Hartford, Greystone are all options to turn right off of South Boulevard. If you're coming southbound, it's kind of the same thing on the east side. All those right turns are still available. I'm sorry, the west side, all those right turns are still available. So New Bern and Clanton are still open. If you're trying to get to, Hollis, Hartford, and Greystone on the southbound on South Boulevard, so the east side of the road, you will have to either turn prematurely at Marsh and kind of come through that area, or go all the way down to Whitten and do a U-turn at Whitten. So if you're just trying to get from way far south to uptown, or uptown to get way far south, then I-77 is your best choice. And of course, Clanton and Remount are still open. Here's a little bit more detail about this Greystone closure. So, right now you can turn, if you're going northbound on South Boulevard, you can turn right onto Greystone. So that's not an issue right now. When we do close down that Greystone for 2 to 3 weeks, then your choices will either be if you're northbound, you're gonna have to turn right on Weston. Turn right on Hartford and then left on Weston to access sort of the Greystone Belton area that way. Or if you're coming southbound, then you can either come all the way down to Whitten and do a U-turn, or better yet, probably it's just a access through Marsh, Melbourne, Marion as a detour there. If you're just trying to get to the Greystone Plaza sort of business park area, you will still be able to come northbound on South Boulevard and just turn right into that Greystone Plaza area where Subway and Greystone Pub are. Okay, so on to my favorite part of the presentation, where we talk a little bit about sort of how stuff happens and how we build the project. People are often asking why we need to close 2 full lanes of South Boulevard, and here's sort of the answer, right? So we're putting in a 24-inch line. So that's the middle there. That's the actual pipe. And then we have to have a trench box and some space on either side of the pipe to work in. And then, you don't want to make the trench so wide that the backhoe falls in. So we're pretty much only doing it the width of the backhoe. And then there's a little bit of extra space on either side of the tracks there, so that we can put the barrier wall in place. So there's not a whole lot of room to work with. And our construction site is actually so small that the backhoe can't even turn. It pretty much can only dig out in front or out in back. This is what it looks like once we're sort of wrapping up a phase. We come back in and we go ahead and reform and repour all the new curbing so that we're basically returning the roadway to a like new condition. So the curb and the gutter are done first, and then we'll come back later and we'll pave even with that to end up with a brand new roadway surface. This is what it looks like when we move to the next phase. The very first thing we do is bring in this thing called a milling machine. It essentially grinds up the first few inches of material, asphalt, turns into like a little like asphalt gravel type material that can be remelted down and reused to pave the future roadway. So it's kind of good. We can recycle this material. It's not wasted. Only the first little portions of the asphalt roadway are actually asphalt, and a lot of other stuff underneath it that is replaced. But this is the first thing we do. We mill the top sections of asphalt away to give us access to the ground below. And we dig a trench, put a pipe in it, and sort of redo the same steps in the opposite order. One of the last steps we do before we reopen the roadway and before we repave everything is compaction. We talked about compaction on previous presentations. Typically, we have roller compactors. We have compactors that are attachments on the backhoes. And then we also have just a more manual compactor that's done sort of by hand, so to speak. So this guy he's basically hold on to this thing's got a big gas-powered engine in the back. There's a slow motion video I think that was put on Instagram. So I'd direct you to go watch that. But basically, he holds on to this thing that jumps up and down and around and tries to run away from him, and it compacts that dirt in real good around that valve box. You see that black thing there? There's a big valve in the ground below that. That's like a little tiny tunnel that goes down to the valve so that we can operate that valve. We're going to eventually backfill dirt up the top of that valve and then pave the top of that valve so that valve will be flush with the ground surface. But in the event of some catastrophic water breakage or something in the future, someone can go out there and take a lid off that valve, put a big long center wrench down into the bottom there and close the water line there so we can make the repair. But we don't want to damage those valve boxes. We don't want to damage those valves. So we go ahead and we compact by hand with these motorized compactors around those valve boxes. And then we come back here, you can actually see, if you look real closely, I think you can actually see there's the valve box that I was just pointing out. I don't know if y'all can see my cursor, but so here's what it looked like before. And then now there's the after. And then we put a fresh new layer of asphalt down, nice and strong and good to be driven on, and we'll come back in and restripe it and then reopen the road. And we take that barrier wall and move it north like a giant inchworm, for lack of a better term. Here's the setting up for this current phase 4 that we're in, moving the barrier wall north. You can see here's the open lanes of traffic going either side of us. We have traffic control out there as well to do what we can to protect our workers there. But then for the most part, once the barrier wall has been moved north and installed, then all the work will take place inside the barrier wall work zone. Let's talk a little bit about the Greystone connection. So there's a water line that goes down Greystone to feed that neighborhood, and we won't be closing down that lane of traffic. So I guess the likely follow-up question would be, well, how do you connect the new line in the middle of the road to the existing line over in Greystone? And what we do is we've been tunneling underneath the existing open lanes of traffic, so we're limiting our lane closures there. And so this is what it looks like. We dig a hole off on the side of the road, and we build this sort of a rail system down at the bottom of the hole, and then we have this thing that's actually, we're going to attach little drill sections, and we're going to basically drill a hole laterally under the roadway. This thing actually has a big jack on the back of it, so it will actually push. It'll drill a hole, and then it will actually push as well. What's called a casing pipe up under the existing roadway that then we put the actual water line inside of. So this way we can actually construct those side connections without having to close the roadway entirely. So I wanted to mention a few other things real quickly here. So when we're dropping back to phase 1, there was we've had some material and application defects on the connection points to the new water line. And so we were looking at what we were connecting. We originally were planning on restoring an equal level of service for what exists now with a little bit of growth. And now we've been in contact with some of the developers along the corridor, and As anyone who lives in this area knows, everything along the light rail now is just sort of starting to get much taller and being redeveloped. So we're going to go ahead and install some larger connection points that are a little bit more robust, and they won't be leaky at all, and they'll last a lot longer. And so we're going to connect these additional sort of connection points that will be much larger and will provide more water for future development up and down the corridor, so that when that development does happen, there will be less need for Charlotte Water to come back in and do additional work in the roadway, because we're all on the same page that the traffic disruptions are fairly severe in this part of town, and we want to make sure that we don't have to come back here for 20 to 50 years to do anything else in this corridor. Chick-fil-A, I just want to mention that real quick as well. If you visited this Chick-fil-A, you know that sometimes cars do back up out into the roadway, and once there's only a single lane of traffic, that could be a larger problem. They are experiencing higher traffic volume right now because of the Woodlawn Chick-fil-A closure. All the Woodlawn Chick-fil-A users are driving over to this part of town to use this Chick-fil-A. That Chick-fil-A and Woodlawn should be completing up construction before we finish up, and that's actually typo, before we go into phase 5. We're in phase 4 already. So there will be less traffic to this Chick-fil-A once we move up into that area, but we also have been meeting with them periodically to talk about how they can change up the way they function and use their parking lot area to keep cars from sitting on South Boulevard. All that being said, right now, if you're trying to get to that Chick-fil-A, turning left into that Chick-fil-A is difficult because of all the construction traffic that is coming out of our work zone right there. And then it's just hard to turn left. So pro tip, if you're trying to get to that Chick-fil-A, the best option is to get over there to South Tryon and then get down to Clanton and come back. So you're coming northbound to turn right into that Chick-fil-A. But we, a lot of people are concerned about the Chick-fil-A, the amount of cars that it just has coming through there, and we are aware of it. And we are working with them on a solution so that traffic won't be any more disrupted than normal. And then with that, there were a few questions in the chat box. I'll go ahead and I see them now, I believe. I'll go ahead and attempt to answer them. Y'all will make sure if I don't answer the question, go ahead and quickly type a follow-up, and I can talk a little more. So Will Jones asked, when Greystone is closed, can you cut through the shopping center to get on south? I don't think legally you're allowed to do that, but I think that may be a potential option. But yeah, both the entrances should be open, so you'll be able to come out of the Greystone parking lot and turn left onto Greystone, or you can go out of that parking lot and turn right onto South Boulevard. So we will not have both of those entrances into the parking lot closed, but you will not be able to just turn directly onto Greystone from South Boulevard or vice versa. And then Adam asked, will residents who live directly off Greystone be without water for any period of time? No, there should be no water outages for any of the residential areas. If I could show you a map of our entire system, there's a ton of redundancy built in. And so a lot of the water that feeds that Greystone, Belton part of Sedgefield, some of that water is sort of, it can come from either the Scaly Bark line, the 30-inch line I mentioned, it can come from that line, or it can come from the South Boulevard side, or even the Park Road side. I mean, we just have a ton of, it's almost like every house has feed from both different directions, and especially with the way Sedgefield is sandwiched between Park Road and South Boulevard and Scaly Bark, there's very large water transmission mains that run on all those major roads that help to feed the residences on all those areas. So I hope that answers your question, Adam. If not, quickly type a follow-up or email to me, right? You also you can email this address if there was other information you wanted. Please sign up for text message alerts and tell all your friends. We won't text you except when something major happens, like with meetings or when we are changing phases, or if there's like a road closure, or things go wrong. This is the website. And then here, this is a duplicate slide as well. All of our contact informations. And yeah, I believe that's it. This is the Charlotte Water City of Charlotte project, putting a new water line in South Boulevard. So if there's no other questions, thank you all for your time. And this recording will be put up on the website, so you can come back and relive it if you get bored later. And y'all have a good Thursday. Thank you.